Imagine if I told you there was a time not too long ago where you could be on vacation in Disney World, hop off an attraction, and book another vacation sponsored by Eastern Airlines. Or get a quick history of aviation sponsored by Delta. And even go to space and fight aliens. And what if I also told you all three of those things were housed in the same show building at one time or another? All that is true and more as we compare Delta Dreamflight to Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin and see which one stands the test of time. This is a series where I compare an attraction to what came before it. The only catch is I have to physically have been on the ride to review it. So I can't compare the original Test Track overlay to what we have presently, since I wasn't in the parks when Test Track first opened. But bear with me as we give a quick history of all the rides that we'll be covering today. This ride has been through 3 iterations, 6 if you count all the little changes that have been made, such as music changes and sponsorship removal. From 1972 to 1989, this attraction saw its first 2 major changes. But unlike the video I made about the living seas where I had little memory of the original ride, I have no recollection of the first versions of this because I was too young to remember. But I will cover every version briefly before the main event, just to give the history the respect it deserves. And just one last thing before we get started. Leave a comment about a Disney memory you have. I want to do a future series where I share our times in the parks, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. And even if you've never been, feel free to ask a question you may have. Let's make this as inclusive as possible. But that's enough explanation. Let's start with a quick history of If You Had Wings. On June 5th, 1972, about a year and a half after Magic Kingdom opened, If You Had Wings was introduced into Tomorrowland. What made this ride unique was its sponsorship with Eastern Airlines. Unlike buying tickets today, you would buy a ticket book. Each ride was assigned a letter A through E. Attractions such as the Main Street vehicles and the carousel were assigned the A list, while more popular attractions such as the Haunted Mansion and the Jungle Cruise were considered E-ticket, those particular tickets being more expensive. Since If You Had Wings had a sponsorship, there was no charge at all to ride this attraction, so you could go on as many times as you'd like. The gimmick, however, was after the ride concluded, you could actually book a flight to one of the many destinations depicted in the attraction. Booking a vacation while on vacation? The 70s were a crazy time to be alive. When entering the show building, guests saw the queue was set up like an airport terminal, even going as far as having fictional flight times on the wall. Once loaded in the Omnimover, you were on what they called Flight 72. You were then moved through a giant globe where you were shown videos of people partying in popular destinations Eastern Airlines flew to. On June 1st, 1987, Eastern Airlines withdrew its sponsorship. Just 5 days later, the ride would be changed to If You Could Fly. It stripped all references to Eastern Airlines and changed the attraction's iconic theme song. Which makes me wonder if they have the name and music already ready for the sponsorship demise, or did they write an entirely new song in less than a week? The building got Delta as their new sponsor, and the ride itself remained mostly unchanged. The queue, however, got rid of the airport terminal theme and opted for a vague plastic futuristic look to fit more into Tomorrowland. This version only lasted 2 years before Delta wanted their own ride for itself. On June 23, 1989, Delta Dreamflight was cleared for takeoff. The revamped ride queue featured the front end of a plane dubbed the Spirit of Delta. Guests would then funnel into a multicolored tunnel reminiscent of the famous Journey into Imagination rainbow arc. Once on board the ride vehicle, parkgoers would be treated to a fun history of aviation. Disney went with a papier-mâché pop-up book art style. But the art direction would change in the next part to be more like If You Had Wings. They showed popular tourist destinations such as San Francisco, Tokyo, and Paris. But instead of using movie screens like its predecessor, they opted to create realistic scenes using props and animatronics. The climax was a first-person view of a plane flying through a canyon. It used quick-moving footage and wind fans to simulate speed to make the rider feel like they were traveling at high speeds. In 1995, Delta decided not to renew its sponsorship due to their partnership with the upcoming Summer Olympics in Atlanta. From January 1st, 1996 through June 4th of the same year, The Delta name was dropped for just Dreamflight. On June 5th, the attraction was renamed once more, this time to just Take Flight. And just like Eastern Airlines, all references to Delta were removed and the theme song was changed once again. Less than 2 years later, Disney opted to scrap this attraction entirely in favor for the new popular IP, Toy Story. On November 3rd, 1998, as of now the sixth and final installment of this Tomorrowland show building, Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin was a huge departure of what came before it. What was once advertisements for airplane companies and tourist destinations was now a flight through space to fight the evil Emperor Zurg. But as we know, every Disney ride starts with a cue. This is probably the most nondescript of any of the lines that came before it. Maybe just edging out the plain blue line from If You Could Fly. Right before you board, you greet Buzz Lightyear himself, then you're ready to go save the galaxy. Once on board, you see your ride vehicle has 2 blasters and a joystick in the middle. Riders can use the joystick to turn 360 degrees. You use your blaster to hit all targets designed as different kinds of aliens. It's a game to see who could get the highest score in the car. You could reach one of 7 ranks, going as far as Star Cadet or Galactic Hero. The ride post-show is the standard gift shop, where you can get your picture taken along with your scores. It's all about having bragging rights with whoever you ride with, either until your next ride attempt or your next vacation, whichever comes first. Believe it or not, Delta Dreamflight was my favorite ride as a kid in Magic Kingdom. Walking into the airplane through the neon tunnel is a memory I could close my eyes and see vividly. Each scene was so different from one another, and you could see the attention to detail in each set piece. The music had that campy late 80s upbeat jingle that's so bad it's good. And the scenes seeing Tokyo and Paris is some of my favorite scenes of all time in Disney. For only being about a 6-minute ride, it crams so many visuals and somehow it doesn't all blend together. It may not be remembered on the level of other Disney classics, but it's made its mark for the few years it was around. As for Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, it was very innovative for its time. Outside of the BB Gun Arcade and Frontierland, to combine a ride with target practice was a great idea. A lesser version of Toy Story Midway Mania. But I can remember riding this attraction 2 months after it opened, and going on it several times with my mom because it was so different from anything else in the parks. Over time, it hasn't held up as well in my opinion. Due to the spinning aspect, it's not uncommon to see certain cars unavailable because of people getting sick. And sometimes the targets or the blasters don't register as hits as often as they should. But overall, the attraction is still very popular and something I make a point to do at least once every trip. So this has been my toughest choice so far. My nostalgia is very strong with Delta Dreamflight. But to be as objective as possible, Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin is probably the overall better attraction. Despite the current wear and tear on the ride, it shouldn't take away from the ride as a whole. Although Dreamflight has a special place in my heart, the ride would be pretty dated if it was still around today. Using planes as transportation is more commonplace than it was in the 80s and 90s. And no matter which version of this you prefer, they all have left their marks on the park in one way or another. And all added fun and intrigue for Tomorrowland and made it a must-see land. Delta Dreamflight will always be remembered fondly, but beating my friends and family in high scores will live forever. But guys, that'll do it for this episode. Join me next week as we hop back on the monorail to Epcot and get Primordial. But drop a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe if I earned it, and as always, thank you so very much for watching.